What's up, party people? Welcome to our incredible auditorium. So interesting time for our church, right? We're out of the Palacio Maria. Thought we'd be here by now, but we're not. And we're waiting on county approvals and inspections. Hey, thank you for your attitude. The feedback that we keep getting from you as a church is it's just not a bunch of grumbling and complaining and griping. It's just support. Thank you for that. I can't wait to be worshiping right here with you. It's April the 2nd. Our first Sunday out of the Palacio Maria, and we're not here. But I wanted to bring this sermon that you could watch online specifically to the topic of Palm Sunday. So it is Palm Sunday. Palm Sunday is that Sunday right before Easter Sunday. And what is it about? I was sort of affected and influenced by people when I've listened to teachings on Palm Sunday, and I always got this essence that people wanted to talk about how it's about the fickleness of people, how people can be fickle. Because Palm Sunday is that Sunday when Jesus rode in to Jerusalem through the eastern gate on a donkey, and everybody cheered for him and everybody loved him. And then a few days later, they crucified him. See how people can be fickle? Well, I don't think we really need that story to tell us that we're fickle. It's an example of how people can change their minds, certainly, but that's not really the thing we should focus in on about Palm Sunday. Palm Sunday is a massive event for Christians. It's huge. It has everything to do with biblical prophecy and an indication of the second coming of Jesus. So let's walk through a little bit together about Palm Sunday, what it means to us, and even how it can relate to us as a church currently in this holding pattern. So I'm standing here in the Splash hallway, the Splash Children's Ministry part of our building. Oh, I love this hallway. Can't you just imagine all the memories that are going to be made here? Children going into these classrooms, getting their minds and hearts lit up with the goodness of God's grace and the gospel and the kingdom. And so many good things are going to happen in this hallway. One of the reasons why Jesus Christ was so famous was because of how he loved children. He wanted kids to be around him. He used the childlike faith as an example for us as adults to follow. He wanted us to pay attention to children because they can become great teachers for us. Well, when Jesus showed these sorts of characters and taught this way, it made his fame explode. And on Palm Sunday, this is what we see, his fame exploding in Jerusalem. So Jesus rides into the eastern gate on a donkey, and people lose their minds. They are so excited to see him. Now, the Pharisees, the religious leaders, this religious machine that just ruled with oppressive leadership over the Jewish people, they didn't like the fact that everybody was cheered for Jesus and waving their branches. They hated that. And you can read about this in Luke 19. But they told Jesus, man, you need to silence these people. Tell them to be quiet. He says one of the coolest things in the whole New Testament. He's like, hey, I get what you're trying to say here, but what you might not know is if these people stop praising me, the rocks on the street, these stones that you see scattered around, those stones, they'll start praising me. What? What did that mean? This was Jesus saying, look, I'm going to get praised. These people could all shut up, but I'm still going to get praised. These rocks around the street, they're going to praise me. Be like a rock concert. Sorry, that was lame. Pretty funny, though. I think it's cool that he said that because you know what happened? You know exactly what happened. When the people heard him say that, they would have lost their mind. They would have screamed even louder. And the Pharisees, they weren't having any of it, and they were mad. Now, that tells you a story of where the week is going. When you bow up against an authority like the Pharisees, you're going to get in trouble. And Jesus picked a fight against the religious machine on our behalf because he had a larger story to tell, a big story of love to show on the cross. So I'm in one of our Splash rooms right now. Look at the colors. Oh my gosh, these colors are so awesome. Like if you're ever, sleepy and you need to wake me up, walk into one of our Splash children's classrooms because boom! You will get the color. The Waters Church is definitely not afraid of color. We got some amazing things going on in this room. So one of the things that kids are going to be learning about in these rooms is the character of Jesus and how people responded to him On Palm Sunday, they responded to him in a very specific way. I want to read to you out of John chapter 12, parts of the story about Palm Sunday. So I'm going to start in verse 12. John chapter 12, starting in verse 12. A great crowd of people heard that Jesus was coming to Jerusalem. So they gathered palm branches from the trees and waved them as they celebrated his arrival. The crowd shouted, Hosanna. So that's a word that basically means save us now. It's not really like a word that you necessarily would use in like a praise thing. It's more like I'm being oppressed and I need you to save me now. We are being oppressed by the Romans. Save us now. And they believed in Jesus' ability to liberate them from this political oppression that they were in. That's a really important thing to remember about Palm Sunday. They shouted, he who comes in the name of the Lord is truly blessed and is King of all Israel. So Jesus found a young donkey, he sat on it, and he rode it through the crowds. The scriptures foretold of this day. Daughter of Zion, do not be afraid. Watch, your king is coming. You will find him seated on the colt of a donkey. And the Pharisees said to one another, our efforts to squelch him have not worked, you think, but now is the time for action. Look, the whole world is following after him. The Pharisees hated him. They hated him so much. But the people, they loved him. They worshiped him. They expressed to him their need. And yes, in a few days, there was a fickle part of their heart that was shown when he was crucified, and they supported it. But let's not lose the moment, the specific strength of Palm Sunday, when the fame of Jesus took over the city and people were so excited to see him there. So we're in another one of our splash rooms right now, and I'm in here because, the walls are green and we're talking about Palm Sunday. So let's talk about the palm branches. Like, why palm branches? Palm branches were used in Roman times to signify victory, specifically of armies that would come in from battle that had been victorious. It was a Roman custom to grab palm branches and wave those as a symbol of victory. I don't know if you've ever seen a really tall palm branch, if it's broken off and you hold it up and you wave it, but it does quite a dance in the air. I'm talking about the huge ones that are like 6-7 feet tall. As you hold them up and wave them, the top of that thing whips around almost like a person's waving. You can imagine hundreds of these waving in the air. What? Signifying victory. The king is coming into the eastern gate of Jerusalem. He's coming in to liberate us, and we will raise these palm branches to signify victory. We will wave them. We will support our king as he comes to liberate us from what we're dealing with. Now, that palm branch was a symbol of conquest, right? Like military might. But what you really learn from Jesus is his mission was not a political mission. He didn't come to show conquest of geography or political party or a system of government. He came as a pursuit of our hearts. If there's anything the Lord needs to conquer in my life, it's my spirit, my soul, my heart, my mind. I want a palm branch to be coming up from my spirit, waving, saying, thank you for conquering me. Because Jesus needed to do that so that I would have any sort of a hope about my future. So there's a lot of connections that we can make. Just remember that palm branch is a sign of conquest and victory. And you have to wonder if Jesus was thinking in his mind, it's not what y'all think. Now we understand being on the other side of his resurrection and the truth. But I wonder what this was like for Jesus as he rode in, seeing everybody so supportive and exciting, and him thinking to himself, yeah, but it's your heart that I want. Well, here we are in our storage room. So this room is going to be quite the utility place with all kinds of things that are going to be stored in here. We'll have a lot of storage that's going up on this wall, our Wi-Fi connections and all that. We have our hot water heater and our janitor closet. We'll have a washer and dryer over there. And we're actually going to also create some classroom space in here as we're kind of squeezed for space because of how the Lord's growing our church, which is really, really cool. Also, right through that door goes into our auditorium. So in this place, I want to talk to you about biblical prophecy. A really important one has to do with the fact that Jesus rode in on a donkey. Yes, that was a fulfillment of prophecy for sure, but it's also a sign of the type of kingly reign that Jesus was actually setting up. In Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9, the Bible says, "Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, daughter of Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and having salvation, gentle and riding on a donkey." That was written 500 years before Palm Sunday happened. Now, in the Old Testament, in 1st and 2nd Kings, we see that a donkey is actually a symbol of peace. Well, that right there is an indication of what kind of King Jesus is in this moment. Now, sure, the Jewish people wanted to see Jesus riding in on a big old steed, a white horse. By the way, we're going to get to that in a minute. That's something that we have to look forward to. But on the entrance into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, this was a different story. This is the portrayal of Jesus as a king, yes, but one who is gentle, one who is peaceful, one who has a conquering mindset about your heart and your soul, but he's not going to do it with military might. He's not going to come in with a big old sword. He's going to come in with love. Gentleness is what your heart needs. That's what Jesus is conquering as he's riding into Jerusalem through the eastern gate on a donkey, coming after our hearts, a gentle and peaceful king. And that is a fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy based on Zechariah 9:9. So another biblical prophecy we need to talk about is why Jesus rode in through the eastern gate. That eastern gate entrance is huge. So now we are in the unfinished portion of our building. Why am I telling you about this here? Because it's the eastern part of our building. See how this is working? See what I'm doing here? So this unfinished space is something that we'll call our phase 2. Part of our construction. We couldn't quite afford to finish this out based on our construction budget. So we're going to get to this hopefully soon. We're praying for that. Along that wall, there's going to be offices. I'm actually standing in a place that's going to be classroom. So there's a lot of really cool plans that we have for this space. Let's talk about the Eastern Gate entrance. So what happened on Palm Sunday? Jesus travels down from Bethany to the Mount of Olives. The donkey was brought to him. He rode that donkey down that Mount of Olives into the Eastern Gate, also called the Golden Gate, right into the city of Jerusalem, right into the actual temple court. And it was there that he was met with praise from the Jewish people, and they were just so excited, and the problems that he faced with the Pharisees as well. It was soon after that discourse, this situation, where Jesus cleaned house in the temple and ran off the crooked money changers, and pulled out that whip and said, "My Father's house shall be a house of prayer, not of politics or fraud." But the fact that Jesus chose this mount and the Mount of Olives and this specific gate is incredibly significant. So in Zechariah 14, it is prophesied that the Messiah, when he returns, will come down the Mount of Olives into the city. Whoa, when he returns. I thought we were talking about Palm Sunday. You need to start getting your brain around that Palm Sunday is also a picture of the second coming of Christ. Now, this is something all of us as Christians are really looking forward to. There's no more donkey. There's no more gentle. There's no more humble. There's power. There's might. He is absolutely going to be on a horse. He is actually coming as the conqueror of the universe, of the planet. That's going to be amazing. So the second coming of Christ is like this larger story that Palm Sunday was actually telling. But look how it lines up. Zechariah 14, Messiah will come down the Mount of Olives. Well, that's exactly where Jesus rode down from, entering the city on Palm Sunday. According to Ezekiel 43, when Messiah returns, he will come through which gate? The Eastern Gate. And according to Ezekiel 44, the Eastern Gate of Jerusalem will remain shut until Messiah returns and comes once again. Now, let me read this to you out of Ezekiel chapter 44, verses 1 and 2. Then the man brought me back to the outer gate of the sanctuary, the one facing east, and it was shut. And the Lord said to me, the gate is to remain shut. It must not be opened. No one may enter through it. It is to remain shut because the Lord, the God of Israel, has entered through it. So that's already happened on Palm Sunday. But this is prophetic statements about the future. The prince himself is the only one who may sit inside the gateway to eat in the presence of the Lord. He is to enter by the way of the portico of the gateway and go out the same way. Now, these words were written 500 years before Jesus, and nobody ever knew that the gate would ever even be sealed. It was a gate that was commonly used all the time, the Golden Gate. People came in and out of that gate. By the way, how many gates were there in Jerusalem? 8. But did you know what happened in 1517 AD when Muslims actually conquered the city of Jerusalem? There was a leader named Suleiman the Magnificent, and he knew about biblical prophecy. And guess what he did to the Eastern Gate, the Golden Gate? He sealed it. When Suleiman the Magnificent sealed the gate, because he understood biblical prophecy, this was his way of saying, ain't no way Messiah is going to come back on my watch. What he didn't realize is he was actually taking part personally in biblical prophecy. Guys, the Eastern Gate remains shut to this day. Look it up online. The Eastern Gate of Jerusalem is shut. One of the things that Suleiman the Magnificent did right outside that Eastern Gate is put a cemetery. Remember, this is a Muslim leader. He put a cemetery right outside that gate. And in his mind, the reason he did that was because dead bodies are unclean to Jewish people. So he was trying to trick the Messiah from returning again on the second coming, because, you know, he'd come in all his glory and all of a sudden see the gate shut and be like, oh, I can't get in because they closed it, which is hilarious that God couldn't get through a sealed gate. And then he's also going to look down and see a cemetery and be like, ew, graves. Yeah, no, Suleiman, that's a really bad plan. I mean, we get it, but come on. So again, which gate is still sealed? The Golden Gate, the Eastern Gate, the very one that Jesus rode in on Palm Sunday, the very one that Ezekiel said would be sealed until the Messiah's return, but only after the prince had gone through it. Once again, come through the Eastern Gate. That's according to biblical prophecy. According to Revelation 19, when Messiah does return, he will trade in his donkey for a much different type of transport. We're talking about a supernatural white horse, and he's going to be coming as the conquering king. So I'm now in our church lobby, and I love this room. I love the high ceilings and the colors, and I can only imagine all of the memories that are going to be made here. I cannot wait to get here. Let's continue that conversation about the conquering king. So you see these specific parts of Palm Sunday that serve as a giant metaphor for the second coming of Christ. Let's let the Bible teach us a little bit more about that second coming. Matthew 24, verse 27, for as lightning that comes from the east is visible from the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man, Jesus Christ, basically seen all over the world. In Isaiah 24, then the glory of the moon will wane, the brightness of the sun will fade. For the Lord of heaven's armies will rule on Mount Zion, which is the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. He will rule in great glory in Jerusalem in sight of all the leaders of his people. These are indications of second coming. You have Matthew 24. That is when the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky. All will see the Son of Man coming. They will see him powerful and glorious, riding on chariots of clouds in the sky. And then you see in Zechariah 14:9, and the Lord will be king over all the earth. And on that day, there will be one Lord, and his name alone will be worshiped. Jesus is coming as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And all of us should shout hallelujah for that second coming. Palm Sunday opens up our eyes to not only the nature of Jesus as he came into this last Passion Week of his life, like what he was about, what he was really conquering at that time, and a gentle and meekness that was setting up for the crucifixion, but it's also a hint and a metaphor of what is coming, because Jesus is absolutely coming back. He will come in the exact same way, conquering king. It's very exciting. So now I'm in the Grow Group room, one of our rooms that we will use so many different ways in our church. It's going to be a place for a lot of gatherings, a lot of meetings, a lot of Bible study. It's going to be wonderful. And in this space, I think I want to close with the idea back to the palm branch, that symbol of bringing honor to the king. But for us, it's honor to the King of Kings. Palm branches were used the ways that they were used for the Romans. But on Palm Sunday, we can imagine like a palm coming up out of our heart who is giving glory to Jesus, who has rescued us, delivered us from the pit of hell and a hopeless future and a life of oppression to sin, by sin, but now freed by grace. I want my life to be like a palm branch that's raised up and giving him glory, letting him know that he is my conquering king that conquered me. And yes, on Palm Sunday, he rode in on a donkey. But man, the day that I got saved, he rode into my heart on a white horse. I know that you feel the same way if you're a believer in Jesus. And I want to forever wave that palm branch in my spirit to him. I want Palm Sunday to be not a reminder of how people can be fickle. I want Palm Sunday to be a time that I join in the praise of Jesus Christ. And I see the story that he's writing. This story of him coming to God's people and liberating people in a different way than they were expecting. It ended that week on a cross. But on the cross, he saved humanity. You even see indications of Roman soldiers that their minds were changed, their lives were changed as they watched this suffering servant, this king of peace and gentleness, go to the cross. I want to wave a palm branch for that. On this Palm Sunday, my hope for you is that you'll be encouraged. Jesus rode into a city to say to that city, I love you. And yeah, you guys are going to turn. Things are going to change. Your attitude's going to shift, but I love you anyway. Everything I do is for you. I didn't come to just gather up people who are great with God. I came for sinners. That's me. That's you. And Palm Sunday is that strong indication of that exact mission. Well, thanks for joining me again on Palm Sunday in our building, a little bit of a tour. Remember that Palm Sunday story shows us that first time that he rode into Jerusalem in that eastern gate, son of a poor carpenter, man of humble beginnings, the underdog, no more. That's not what we're looking forward to now. Jesus comes back into that eastern gate again. The second coming of Christ, man, totally different. Conquering king, power and might, everything that we are all excited about since he's already conquered our hearts. Go ahead and conquer the universe. We can't wait for his second coming. So next week is Easter, and we're not going to be able to hold services in this room, but we are going to do something pretty special. We will meet right out on our front porch, and we're going to have an Easter gathering. And it'll have to be outside in terms of the gathering. We can come inside for a couple of tours and go to the restroom. But I hope to see you next week. That will be April the 9th at 10 a.m. We're going to have some refreshments. We're going to do a couple of songs. I'm going to have a devotional thought. It's not going to be long because it's outside and might not be that comfortable. Bring a chair if you want to sit down. You can absolutely sit in the grass. We don't have to worry about that anymore. You can sit in the grass, sit up on the porch. We'd love to do church with you guys in person. Not exactly what we're looking forward to, but a version of it. At least it's up here in the building. I love you guys. Happy Palm Sunday. I can't wait to see you soon. And between now and then, let's keep on making Jesus famous. I love you guys. We are the church. I love doing that in this room. I'll see you soon.